One of her report, News 18's Kelly Roberts took a look at whether there is a migration from Chicago to Tippecanoe County and whether it's having a negative impact. Interviews with law enforcement and social services said that a migration is happening, but maybe not to the large extent that some think. However, crime has been correlated with people from Chicago.
People are not just moving to Tippecanoe County from Chicago. Greater Lafayette is a growing global community. In part 2 of her report, News 18's Kelly Roberts reports how changing demographics are changing attitudes locally.
In meetings about diversity, leaders in the community have challenged the public to think about what they mean when they say people from Chicago. Do they mean someone who is not white? Leaders say it's become a term with racial undertones, and the terminology needs to be challenged. At the turn of the century, the Chicago Housing Authority began demolishing the Cabrini Green public housing complex. By the time of the demolition, the complex was home to mainly lower-income African Americans. Some believe this caused a migration to Tippecanoe County and started changing the demographics of the community.
We're kind of going through that period where we still like the idea of being the feel of being a small town community, but we also have to face the realities that we are, a global community.
Lafayette Police Chief Patrick Flannelly says the way the police force is growing is representative to a growing community. 20 years ago, LPD had fewer than 80 officers. Now the force has funding for 137. Flannelly says people are moving to Tippecanoe County for a variety of reasons, including available jobs and Purdue University, and that means people from all walks of life and all races are making the community home. He admits while the numbers on the police force represent a growing community, the people on the force do not. Right now, LPD has 6 female officers and 2 African Americans, the rest white males.
If we can have great candidates and a force that's more representative of the community, then that's the ideal.
Lafayette Housing Authority Deputy Director Vida Hoyer has been with the organization for 27 years. She says in the past the organization has predominantly served white clients, but not anymore.
Currently our demographic is we're about 23 to 24% African American on our program. And, being here 27 years, that has changed dramatically from when I first started in 1987, when we were about, 2 to 4%.
The growing African American population and the idea that people are migrating from Chicago to Tippecanoe County has been brought up in different diversity meetings in the community. Some question if the term people from Chicago means you're talking about someone who is not white. Purdue University Latino Cultural Center Director Aurelio Curbelo says he first heard the term and the idea of a Chicago migration in Iowa more than a decade ago. He says it's a perfect example of how racism is evolving.
People nowadays, they don't want to be called racist or anything like that, and now they use a new terminology. They use the terminology people from Chicago are coming to town instead of saying or mentioning a particular ethnic group.
Misha Stepney and Keitha Payton both moved to Tippecanoe County from Chicago. They came here for jobs and education for both themselves and their children. They also came here because it's different.
In general, the environment itself, it's just something different about the environment. To be honest, it's not as much violence.
This is a family town, so it's best when you have a family to have somewhere that you can raise them, without a lot of poverty, a lot of drugs, violence, things like that. That's in Cook County.
But they admit their moves did not come without some uncomfortable moments.
If you was from Chicago, it was like it was a label put on you. You're gonna be a bad person. So they didn't feel I'm an adult, so I kind of knew how to deal with it. Didn't look at it as though, oh, they don't accept me. They didn't know me, so it didn't really bother me. But the kids, they had a little trouble.
Racism still exists, to be honest. It still exists here in town. But again, I don't let that impact me.
Purdue's Vice Provost for Diversity, Dr. Christine Taylor, says racism absolutely still exists. She says there is no new wave of racism because that would mean racism would have ended for a time.
Is it a new, perhaps, set of languages? Is it a new way of talking about a particular group? Possibly yes, but a new wave? No.
When Lafayette Urban Ministry Executive Director Joe Micon wrote his newsletter last month about the reasons he sees people coming to the community from Chicago, job opportunities, good public schools, and safe streets, he says he wanted to challenge the way people are thinking.
I think that that terminology in my mind is something that needs to be confronted, something that needs to be challenged, and I think it needs to call us in this community to our better selves.
It's about communication. You know, once people start communicating and learning from one another, you will see a change, and it's not going to be something that's going to change overnight.
Keitha Payton plans to graduate from St. Elizabeth School of Nursing next December. Misha Stepney currently works full-time at Heartland Automotive. Both say they feel a part of this community and plan to call it home for a long time. This story, along with part 1 of my report, can be found on WLFI.com. Kelly Roberts, News 18.